Today, I want to talk about the way accounting databases work. This is basically the concept behind every accounting system that you're going to run into. Most nonprofits use QuickBooks, but it works the same way for SAP, Oracle, Sage, pretty much all of them. Across the top, we have what are called dimensions. We have to have a name for it, and it beats calling it stuff. So we start out with the date. In this case, I have a column for income, a column for expenses. I have the donor. Donors, grantors, customers are people who give you money. Vendors and contractors are people to whom you give money. A description to say what it's there for. The category comes from your general ledger accounts. In QuickBooks speak, a project is used to record grant activity, and classes are used to record functional areas. Let's take a quick look at that. So in my pretend organization, I have the Kellogg grant and the Melinda Gates Foundation, rather. And they gave us the Kellogg grant and the Gates grant. Remember, you might get more than one grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and that's why we do it this way. So you have one grantor, and you could have multiple grants. For the functional income and expenses, you have general administrative, programming, and fundraising. If you're completing the full 990 form, these are the functional areas you must report. We break it down further so that the individual programs, in my pretend example, the food bank and the women's shelter, are subclasses to programming. So this is the parent and these are the children. In fundraising, we do the same thing. Each individual fundraiser has its own class or subclass. This allows us to determine whether the 2024 annual gala made any money. So let's go back to our database. Okay, so here's how this works. Now that I have dates, I can filter by dates. In this case, I just have dates to filter, but I would have months or years. So I can do either one. I'm not going to filter by that. I could filter by income or expenses, or I could run a report by donor or customer. So perhaps I want to see what Angela Torres has given me, and I can run a report filtering just for Angela Torres's, in this case, $130. I can also sort by these fields, so then I can have a general report by customer as to how much money each one gave. And of course, QuickBooks or any accounting software will give you totals. Same thing for vendors. And descriptions really you cannot sort on. The categories, QuickBooks calls general ledger accounts categories. So now I can come through and say, for example, how much money did I spend on advertising? And it appears I've only spent $65 on advertising. It makes it very easy and fast to run reports within QuickBooks. Now we have projects. Projects are grants. So I'm going to say, let's only look at the Kellogg grant. Well, now we know that the Kellogg grant, sorry, made a mistake. There we go. So now we know that the Kellogg grant, here we have a donation of $5,000, and here's what's come out of it, which in this case is $1,100, so that I now know that I have $3,900 left to spend of the Kellogg grant, for example. And let's select all again. Now we're getting into the functional areas or classes. So let's take a look at the women's shelter. There we go. And so now I can see how much money we've spent on the women's shelter. And I can tell you that we had $7,000 of income for the women's shelter through, in this case, a couple of grants. I can also then filter for the Kellogg grant, for example, and I now know exactly how much money I have spent and exactly where it was sent. This is how these databases work. So the trick is to set up your dimensions properly. Select all three and select all 14. Now I'm back to where I started from. That is the basic function behind any accounting database. I hope that makes some sense. Thank you.